All right, it's into Clinch, where we tackle and grapple everything martial arts. Here with Andy Gron and Nat McIntyre. Okay, it's going to our sponsors, or those people who has built us up over the years. Guru Dan Inasanto, Inasanto.com, Eric Paulson, EricPaulson.com, Professor Pedro Sauer at PedroSauer.com, and World Thai Boxing Association at ThaiBoxing.com, and of course the Academy MN.com.
Okay, so today we are going to talk a little bit about the beginner's mindset. So to begin with, let's define, what a beginner is and what mindset is really. When I think of a beginner, you're sort of a beginner at all stages of your development in martial arts. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize, that even those of us that have trained for 20, 30 years or more, we still look at everything with an open and slightly skeptical mindset, right? And mindset would be just the attitude that you choose to take about your training, right? So, but when you think about that beginner mindset, like, what do you guys think about how beginners should approach training?
Well, just like we started out in school, you're in kindergarten. I think you should approach the training just like that, where everything's brand new, and you should be excited about that, right? Be excited about the learning process, and even though, you're coming into something new, and there's people are afraid and they're nervous about stuff, but ultimately you should have that kind of hunger and that yearning to want to learn something new, and always maintain that. That's the one thing I see, like in Guru Dan. He can watch the simplest thing and just be like totally excited about it. Like you watch him talk about a jab, and you're like, Guru, that's a jab. And he's like, yeah, but look at how he's doing it. I mean, he's still so excited about the martial arts. Everything's still new. And he's still doing privates and still learning new things. That's how I think, have that eagerness and that anticipation to go in there and get something new.
There's a lot of people I notice that they come with preconceived notions about what it's supposed to be. They see things on TV and they have an idea of what they're supposed to do. And I think it's like you said, if you can sort of leave those preconceived notions behind and come in with open mind and have fun and just try to learn from a clean slate, which is always hard to do. But I think that's going to hold you back when you have those preconceived notions about what you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to do at first.
Yeah, your brain is really a fine-tuned machine that is really looking for shortcuts, right?
Sure.
And it fills itself with a lot of opinions before you get started, or even after you get started, and we're just full of these biases. So I think the beginner mindset is really trying to look at everything in a really super open way and being open to all sorts of change.
It's fun to be a white belt.
Right.
It's fun to be a beginner. And if it's not fun for you, I mean, that's kind of a shame, because it should definitely be a good time.
But one of the things that comes to mind to me is that there's this saying, you should act as if, or you should fake it till you make it. And, as a competitor, you do have to sometimes pump yourself up. And, when you are learning something new, you do sort of have to have that faith that it works. Now, sometimes this sort of backfires, and people really think that they know.
And the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe you can call it what you want, but, they lose sort of the balance between this open-mindedness and, the thinking that they've already got everything figured out. And, that's a really common complaint with instructors and other students, with brand new students, is, that person, they think they know everything. And, how can we guide people, or how should people think about that problem, like balancing out this theory of just, believing in yourself versus overconfidence, I guess?
Well, I think obviously once you get to the point where you're testing it a little bit more, then sometimes that takes care of itself. It's usually when they're not really being tested in a way that, like live grappling, maybe they haven't really been put in those situations where they finally realize, I really guess I don't know as much as I thought I did. And, I think you still got to guide people all the time, right? You still got to talk to them, and you realize, hey, there's different ways to approach this. We're just at the very beginning of this, and there's so much more you can learn. And I think sometimes people come in and they go home and they YouTube and they think they know more and more and more. And sometimes if you coddle them too much at that point, it's like you kind of let them get away with it. So there's got to be that fine line where they have to realize that, yeah, it's not all that simple. There's going to be some struggle. And the struggle is really what we're after. We want to have that struggle because that's where we grow.
Yeah, you want to be exposed. You don't want to just hide in your own little world and think you're great when you're not. I mean, that's, and these combative arts, Thai boxing, jiu-jitsu, these arts show you pretty quick if you're actually really, really doing them. They show you what you don't know or what you do know. And I guess I've seen some people who do get shown and still feel that way, but it's more rare.
Well, the great thing about Thai boxing and jiu-jitsu and judo and a lot of the combative martial arts is the feedback is pretty immediate.
Yes. Yeah.
You can feel right away whether or not it works, whether or not you can make it work. Now, some people can do things, technically incorrect and use strength and speed or whatever to make it work. But in the big picture, in the long run, they're going to probably get weeded out. So, one of the things that I recommend for beginners to do is to try to take a lot of the athleticism out of it. And I take that from the story that Pedro Sauer told Greg early on, was to get rid of all the athleticism. And that's, I think, tremendously helpful from a beginner perspective, because you're going to know more in the long run. You're going to actually know. And when you know, that's where the true confidence comes from. Then it's not like faking it. Then you know because you've done it a bunch. And that's really the only way that you can ever have true confidence in what moves you're trying to do, is because you've done them a lot. If you've never done them, yeah, you're going to have to believe in your instructor and believe in the moves, but until you've done it a bunch, you're not going to have confidence. And the reason you have confidence when you're competing is because you've actually performed the techniques a lot.
Sure.
So, for me, I think a big part of the mindset was in gymnastics, because once again, feedback is immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a saying that I remember when I showed something on one of my Instagram posts where Nina was just wiping out on the balance beam, and she just typed back, fail, fail, fail until you don't. And that's kind of gymnastics. And you learn that. You realize, man, you make one little mistake, you fall, boom. And so that mentality you bring into the rest of it.
You can't be too worried about failure, right?
You can't. You just got to realize that it's part of the process. And the more you embrace almost seeking failure, the better you're going to get faster. Because now you're going to find your limits. You're going to know where you can go, where you can't go. Right? So I think that's a big thing that a lot of beginners and a lot of people that are doing anything new at first, they kind of have that, they don't want to fail.
Yeah.
They're going to feel stupid. Well, if you get rid of that fast, you grow fast.
I mean, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai is so humbling.
Yeah.
I mean, you're being humbled and forced to face it really right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you either have to make a decision if that's going to break you and you're going to quit, or like try to let it go. And I think it comes from the culture, creating a culture that it's okay to fail and to tap and to let it go and start over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's something that, again, Professor Pedro Sauer said, who knows, countless times. I've probably tapped 1,000,000 times on my way to black belt, but that's 1,000,000 things I've learned along the way. And that's something that all the great jiu-jitsu guys who are really grappling a lot, they don't really worry about that in the gym, right? Because that gives them more knowledge about where to go, what not to do, how to do it. So immediately it's like, oh, I guess I want to go this way. I think about it and I go that way, and it's the wrong way. Well, I know it and I go, okay, that's something I learned. Big deal. This is not where you're getting your trophies and your medals and your money, right? That's where you just learn and grow and have fun. And that's the biggest thing, because if you're having fun, you're going to keep growing and you want to come back.
Right. So another question that comes up with beginner training is how much physical training, how many classes should you take, and also how much training on your own? How much time should you dedicate to just sort of visualize martial arts, or come in an open mat and kind of do some positional rolling or experiment with different stuff like What are your guys' thoughts on generating that balance between, not getting too tired and sore, getting enough information from the classroom, and then rehearsing that stuff on your own without sort of a lifeline there, like a coach to remind you all the time?
Well, I think that depending on the person's background, of course, if they are coming in and they haven't done a lot of athletics or they haven't done anything where they've really pushed themselves, then definitely they should be starting out very slowly. All right. But you get somebody who's come in who understands the process more. Maybe they've been in athletics for a long time and they understand that where and how to train and what to do. I mean, there's different levels, I think. But if you're looking at the average person, we found this out right away when we started changing how we did our program and just allowing people to come in twice a week and then slowly bring themselves up. It was more of a formula for success as opposed to you can do everything every day. And people just got overwhelmed and they quit and who knows what the deal was going on. But it was kind of opposite of what I thought because I was thinking through my own brain that wanted to train all the time, day in, day out. Didn't matter if I was sick or not, but that's not how normal people are.
I think that solo work and being alone in your own head, in your own space, trying to work things out, trying to visualize things, I think that is something that is being lost. We're constantly bombarded with information. Always, our attention is always held.
Yeah.
And I think shadowboxing, even doing jiu-jitsu on your own, moves by yourself, and you have that sort of solitude of that alone time and training, I think is really, really healthy and probably really good for your training and for your growth.
I have a great example of that with Rick Fay and myself. We'd go to a Guru Dan seminar and we'd have to absorb as much as we can. He'd remember certain things, I'd remember certain things, and then we'd have to come back and train it, and we would create drills out of that, and we would start making the process of what Guru Dan was trying to talk about, right? And then when I'd go out to LA, the people were fed with the silver spoon. And you got out there,
for granted.
and you knew more about the process than they did.
Yeah.
Because you were creating on your own. You were trying to say, okay, I bet she's doing this and this and this. So that's a huge part of it. And that's why I'm very fortunate. I think the people who grew up before all the internet and all the DVDs and all this, where you had to work a couple of moves because that's all you really knew. And you drilled them and you trained them and you worked them. And when you saw something different, you were like, oh my gosh, you can do this too. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, wow, how much farther can just go? And you had like 4 escapes. Now it's just like people look at one DVD and it got 15 different escapes and it can't even do one.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because now people are learning so fast and it's incredible. But also, too, I think a bunch of people are left behind because of it. I do.
It's not as meaningful if you have to earn it. If you have to spend the time alone, thinking about it, alone, practicing it, and you really have to earn the memory, the knowledge of the techniques, then you have it. But if you can rely on pulling your phone out and YouTubing it, or just asking someone at any moment, there's no urgency. There's no sense of like I must put this program that's into my body. And yeah, we are kind of losing that. But at the same time, it's great because we have this access to.
We just have to learn how to use it.
Better, world of information. So.
Well, I think that people who understand how to train.
Yeah.
Now it's great because now you can take something and you also know that, hey, I can only really work a few things diligently at one time. And so you start to get it. But then also, I think the better you get and the more training you have, you can start to find the common denominators between moves. And all of a sudden you're working one move from one art and it has so much more than just that one art. It finds its way into everything you do. But that's also a process that if you don't research and really dig down deep and try to find out how it works for you, why it works for you, what's your body type, what's your personality, all these things I think are so important. And even as a beginner, you're coming in and you got to say, some people come in and they're more maybe more aggressive as far as their personality, and other people are really they're laid back and they're more. I'm just gonna sit back and counter things. That makes a difference in how you learn as well. So,
Um, what's the role of written goals as a beginner? Like, do you recommend that people starting off in martial arts training have put the pencil or the pen to the pad and write out their goals? And I mean, I'm going to go on record and say I do. But I think a lot of times what stops people is they think, well, what if I don't do it? And then I wrote it down, and that would be bad, and I would feel bad about myself. So therefore, I'm not
You're
going to
more
do
likely to do it if you write it down.
Yeah, I mean, for real, you
Yeah.
are.
I think so too.
I was even talking about to the competitors yesterday, the fight team, and I said, hey, listen, if you don't know what you really want and what you're going after, it's just random then. And randomness does not equal success. It doesn't get there very often, right? Then if you have a great fight, it's kind of luck. But if you know what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, who you're going to do it with, how often you're going to do it, I mean, you're writing things down. You're going to be more, like you said, more likely to do it. Now, the other thing, too, is it's you have your to-do list, right? And then as you start to want to become better, you have your not to-do list anymore. Maybe I shouldn't do this. I'm going to, now you got to think both ways if you want to ultimately go that route.
Yeah, that brings up another important topic, which is the idea of developing discipline. I think some people have some previous maybe military or high school athletics, and they tend to thrive. But for people that come in who have not developed the habit of discipline, like what sorts of recommendations do you guys have for those beginner students that are at least aware of the fact that they need more discipline in their life?
I think the biggest thing at first is just stay with your consistent schedule. Here's your classes. Just come to those classes. Make that the habit. And even little things like listening to people talk about this. If you're wanting to work out, that before you do that, right where you're going to see it, you put your workout clothes. So when you get up in the morning, you see them already folded on the table, and you go, "Oh yeah, my workout clothes." And then the other person who has talks about this is they were talking about, instead of having this big elaborate plan, okay, I got to get up, I got to go to this, I got to get in it. He said, no, as soon as you get in your car and you're driving, you've already started the habit, right?
Yeah.
So you just, okay, I got to be at the gym at 5:30. I'm going to get in my car at 5:15 and drive. And then when you get there, it's usually not a problem.
Yeah.
So just making that consistent effort to show up. And anything that's becomes a habit of some sort, it's going to take a little bit of time. Nothing's instant. So the more
For it to feel easy,
Yeah.
or to be natural.
Yeah. So just
Little successes too.
Yeah, little successes, and just maintaining that consistency.
I would add that you're a product of the people you surround yourself with, and that finding connections, finding the community in the gym that is going to hold you accountable is going to be really key too. As soon as you have a couple people that you're accountable to in the community at the academy, then that you're going to be more likely to feel bad if you don't show up, right? And when it's whatever time it is and it's time to go and there's other things that, are pulling you in different directions, that accountability factor is huge, right? Like if you know they're depending on you to be the person in class that you partner up with, you're going to show up. So find those people and build those relationships, and that's really going to put you in a different mind space. A lot of people are held back by being attached to people that are super negative and full of excuses, and that really interrupts the development of discipline. But when you're around other people that are super disciplined, it builds everybody up.
Man, I know. I mean, just look at when we were first starting, and we had our team training, our Thai boxing. I mean, you showed up because you didn't want to let down your training partner.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. And that was the way it was. It's like, man, I got to be there. I got to make sure I'm there. And that just became so normal.
I think that still runs through the teams right now because people want to show up for each other. If you have fights coming up, it's like if you don't show up, you're taking away.
Well, at least it is for the serious people.
Yeah, for sure.
That's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think you said in the beginning too, writing down those goals when you're first starting. If you want to cultivate a little bit of discipline, write down simple things that you know you can get done,
Yeah.
and start and stick to them. Like get up at the same time every morning, make
Yeah.
your bed, or like simple stuff like that, and you start out the day with something positive that you did.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, in in a couple, 2, 3 years, 5 years, you can be 100. You can do a 180-degree turn.
I believe it.
In your life.
Well, I've seen it so many times here.
People can really make dramatic shifts in a short amount of time if they're serious. So, let's talk about the role of basics as a beginner with the beginner's mindset. Like, at the end of the day, there's a lot of cool, fancy stuff that you'll see highlight reels of people doing, like head kick knockouts or flying arm bars and like really cool stuff. But like that's just the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, how much time do people dedicate to the basics? And that goes when we're talking about beginner mindset. Like, for people that are at a black belt level, what's the role of the basics for people that are black belt and white belt?
I believe the basics are everything. I mean, that's one of my big sayings I always say is simple things done right at the right time win fights. The more complicated, the more moving parts, the more things can go wrong. And the other thing about the fundamentals and the basics that are so important is that as you progress and travel through the years of your training and your body gets a little bit older and you lose some of that speed and that athleticism, what are you going to rely on?
Yeah.
Basic fundamental
Yep.
movements. So, yeah, you learn the fundamentals, you become really good at it, and they become what you can always fall back onto.
Sure.
And I just think it's so huge. And if you're looking at most of the, let's say arts that cost you dearly when you make a mistake, like you get punched in the face really hard or you get kneed or you get elbowed, those arts really are born on the basics.
Think about not being able to block a leg kick. So a fundamental defense that if you don't spend the time on that basic, and that is not an innate skill, a simple thing like that, not being able to block a leg kick, you will lose. And I've seen that a ton of time. People spend a ton of time.
Well, you're
on
not
everything.
just going to lose. Your leg's going to hurt real
Yeah.
bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel that sting. That's for sure. But yeah, it's the
and
simplest thing.
Simplest thing. And I think that the closer the art is to the reality of a real fight, the more important those basics are
Yeah.
For self-protection.
for self-protection.
So, with that in mind, then we're asking people sometimes to do boring and difficult stuff. Like, I know for kids especially, like if you want to keep kids motivated, it's got to be fun. And adults
Yeah.
are basically big kids. So what's the role? How do you balance, making things fun and interesting, but at the same time getting in enough reps on all the basic techniques? Like you got to keep drilling basic moves, and you got to keep letting yourself practice basic moves. If you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu and you never have anyone on your back, and and all you do is your offense, and then sometimes somebody gets you and has your back, and you haven't continually been drilling the moves, you're going to be rusty, right? So I think it's important to keep always drilling fundamental basic moves, right? But at the same time, you're asking people to do something that's difficult, right? And you want to keep them training. Like, how do you balance those two things?
Well, I think, you got to have it fun, but at the same time, you got to give them what they want, but you got to give them what they need. And so the big thing is, you have games, you disguise the repetition, you do different setups for the same move, you force them into positions and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. You got 30 seconds to get out. I mean, there's so many little things you can do. Think about wrestling. That's the fundamental takedowns, a single leg, a double leg, a high crotch, a snap down, go behind. That's it. I mean, it's been the same for ever. And the same moves on the bottom. Of course, you have, variety of different setups and everything else, but it comes down to those fundamental skills. And there's a lot of different games, and there's a lot of different drills, and there's a lot of different situations that you create. and you put people in positions that they're not used to, and everybody has to do it. Like, okay, now the next person, you give up your back, and now you got one person, you just play. I think that's such a huge part of it, because ultimately, if they're not having fun, they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Can't be just like boring, because the general person, they may, like, especially the beginner, they might not even really 100% know why they're even there. They just know they wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this? One of the things I remember when I started was holding pads. And we had those big Permabuilt tie pads. My arms got really tired, right? And people would spaz out and miss, and it was uncomfortable, and it got really uncomfortable. I just hated that. Or doing the stick work, and people would accidentally hit your hands all the time, right? Or you're grappling, and someone is constantly doing whatever. Now I'm a beginner. I'm with another beginner, and someone's being a spaz or a hack. What's your advice for dealing with that situation? Like, how can we make that situation easier for people when they're getting started? You've got a training partner that's going off on you.
Well, I mean, at the beginning, what we did anyways, when we changed things, and we took the pad work out, and we took live grappling out, and we took all these things out where the potential for being a spaz was high, right? And now we took those out. It definitely has lowered it, but you still have people that come in. So sometimes you have to definitely match your partners, because you've got somebody is a little bit hesitant and they're not comfortable, and then you put somebody in there that's kind of a known spaz. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. So, setting them up, and then also talking to that person, talking about, telling them to try to go slower, or bring them down, to put them in a position where they can't be that crazy. I mean,
a lot of times it's just they're afraid and they're doing things too fast.
Yeah.
What if we think about heading it off before it even gets to that point? Like you said, can create that culture before they have the opportunity to really go off like that. So if we create that culture before they even start grappling, that both partners have to benefit, rather than one person smashing on the other person.
Yeah.
I think we're way ahead of the game.
Big thing because we have them, there's still guys that I talk to all the time, and when they go, they're just flexing with everything they got. They're just trying, and you just tell them, hey, relax your breathing, breathe out of your nose. I try to say, if you start breathing out of your mouth, you're going too hard. So try to do all these little different tricks, and all of a sudden one of them works. Because there's no end-all, be-all for everybody. So it's like you just kind of go down the list, because sometimes whatever the person's background is, man, they come in and they can't lose, or they always want to be on top, and they never want to give up. And it's like, okay, well, ultimately, to stay in this the longest,
you're going to have to give up.
You're going to have to give a little bit, or else you're going to get hurt.
Yep.
Right. I would just add that don't be afraid to tell your training partner, could you slow it down a bit?
Yeah.
I can't get the pads up fast enough, and or I can't move that fast, and take the responsibility off your partner, even if you can, and just don't be afraid to talk to people. And remember that people learn at different rates, and so if your expectation is that everyone's going to come in and hear something once or twice or 10 times even sometimes before they get it, you're in for a long night, because some people have to do things a lot of times before it becomes natural for them, and that includes not being a spaz. So don't be afraid if your training partner is a spaz to just gently let them know. And the way to do it is to take some responsibility on yourself, even if it's not your responsibility. Just say, yeah, can you go a little slower? I'm having trouble going that fast.
Yeah.
And
it's not challenging. It's not a
yeah. I think you'll get some good results with that strategy. So, all right. Well, you guys got any other last thoughts or?
Hey, I like the philosophy of Guru Dan. Come in every day like you're going to kindergarten. All right,
That's awesome.
Just like everything's brand new. You get to see things, you get to do things, and honestly, everything is brand new because
Yep.
every day is a different day. And every day you're on the mat doing something, you're learning something. Be creative and have fun with it.
Yep.
Have fun with
That's
it.
the Zen concept of Shoshin, which is having an open mind.
Beginner's mind.
Mm-hmm. At all
Yeah.
times being open about everything. So
I would say find the passion in it, and if you develop that passion and you have that passion for it, training's going to be easy and really fun. Even on the days that you don't really want to do it, you're still going to want to show up because it's still where you want to be.
But we
Because
just
you have that passion.
we talked about it today. How many times have we come in where we felt like, oh, this is going to be a crummy day, and it was the best day ever.
Yeah, you can't tell when it's going to be
Yes.
the good day.
And so just have that mindset that no matter how you're feeling when you walk into that gym and you smell the air or whatever, it's like a click that goes on. And that's another thing, have those little triggers. You walk into the door, it's like, bam, all right, I'm here to train. Have fun. Number one.
okay, outstanding. So hey, if you guys like the podcast, please review us on iTunes and share the podcast with your friends. You can find us on Twitter at MMAA Combat Zone and the Academy MN on Facebook and Instagram as well, and our website, theacademymn.com. All right, until next time.